it water with the sheep in the box?
I recently found myself unemployed. This is a semi-regular occurrence for me and many other disabled people in the workforce, but this video isn't really about that, so let's ignore it for now. The point is that as of this video's release, I'm unemployed, and as a result I've been watching a fucking ton of daytime TV, almost as much as my granny, though admittedly at a lower volume. And you know what I noticed? Whilst a lot of primetime TV is generally pro-capitalism and the status quo, that's only to be expected, but it's also geared towards a general audience, whereas daytime TV is mainly targeting the unemployed, elderly and students because, generally speaking, those are the people who are at home all day with nothing better to do than watch daytime TV. And daytime TV is, a majority of the time, actually anti-poor people. It's class warfare in banal media form. Allow me to explain. Let's say you're unemployed, struggling to survive, and the DWP actively wants you to starve and die, and is doing everything possible to crush you under its boot. Maybe you're unable to work, you're disabled or whatever, and you look to the TV, one of the only constants in your life, one of the only pieces of entertainment you have, especially if you're older and don't have Netflix or really use YouTube or whatever, and you see this.
You got a job since the last show?
Yes, I have.
Well done. Hallelujah.
Yeah, hallelujah.
You might need it with the amount of kids you're producing.
So you leave it on because it's not like you've got anything better to do, and even if you did, going out is expensive, and a lot of time you have to be careful how often you even get on the bus and so on because they keep putting the fares up and they've cut your benefits again. And what does the TV tell you about yourself and the system that hurts you? Well, for the most part, the only time working class people are showcased is to belittle them or show extreme, exaggerated fringe examples of the underclass, as in Benefit Street or Jeremy Kyle, and to add insult to injury, it will then compound that feeling of inadequacy by showcasing positive, fluffy content detailing the lives of the rich and powerful by, for example, showing literally hours of programming about people buying houses, usually as a holiday home, for early retirement, or to renovate and sell for profit or else rent out to people like you. The message is clear. You are scum. The fact that you live in poverty and are often pushed to desperate lengths is a personal failure, and the world sees you like this.
Is this it then? Are we done?
Yeah.
There's nobody else in the family for you to sleep with?
No.
Your betters, the ones benefiting from the system that's crushing you under its boot, are pleasant, happy, relatable people, and it definitely shouldn't be a fucking crime that they can afford to own multiple homes whilst there are people living and dying on the streets of this country. Not all the examples I'm going to use today will be daytime examples, because working people need someone to look down on just as the underclass need to be broken down and demoralised, but most of them are.
On today's show, a woman here to confront her ex-partner. A man accused of being an unfit father finds out today if he really is the dad. The wife who claims she got an STI from her husband. The mum who says her fiancé's family won't accept their relationship. A man who wants to know why his family hate his pregnant girlfriend.
Okay, let's acknowledge the obnoxious, classist fucking cunt in the room. Jeremy Kyle is obviously the first thing that leaps to mind when one so much as mentions class dynamics as it pertains to daytime TV, and yes, the fact that a public school educated son of the personal assistant and accountant to the Queen Mother can have a career screaming at, belittling and abusing vulnerable, mentally ill poor people spanning 1.5 decades is in many ways a perfect encapsulation of our class-driven, stratified society, but it's also a rather sad indictment as well. I'm not going to go too in depth about this because I don't want to just rehash that video that Jack Saint made about it, but to summarise, the purpose of the Jeremy Kyle show was to serve as a method of entertainment, yes, but mostly by taking advantage of vulnerable people and using them for sick mockery purposes, and likewise showcasing them as an extreme example of what poor, desperate, unemployed people are really like. Everyone who's ever been unemployed knows what it's like to be compared to the people on the show, and honestly, as someone who I would consider to have a lot of empathy for other people in difficult circumstances, watching clips of the show as research for this episode was hard for me. I used to watch it as a student sometimes, and to my shame, I never really felt empathy for the people featured on the show at the time. I used to view it in the same way a lot of people did, as a vehicle for mocking the disadvantaged. I was little more than a kid with his whole life ahead of him who'd bought into this idea that capitalism was a meritocracy, and therefore when I left university, I wouldn't become like them. I was smart and creative and hardworking. Problem is, so were a lot of people on the show. See, Jeremy Kyle pretty much exclusively picked on vulnerable people and then ramped up the pressure on them, maybe strategically lying to them or using the status of the show as a problem solver to manipulate them into appearing on the show.
When they rang me, the producers were like urging me to come on. They was begging me. They pretty much ordered me a taxi to where I was at that moment of time. But yeah, it was just mad, really.
Initially, though, had you got in touch with them?
Initially, we got in touch with them, yeah, and then after that, it was just constant bombardment. It was just like messages and ringing, saying, are you going to come on and do this and prove yourself you're not, that to your brother and to your family, that you're not a liar.
They used the lie detector test, which has been the cause of many a fight and or disagreement on the show, as an ultimate arbiter of truth, conveniently leaving out the fact that this is about as far from being accurate as possible. On the show, it's used as this gotcha moment, where either the accuser was wrong and is shamed for having no faith in their partner, or the partner is caught out in a lie, both of which are used to viciously mock, belittle, and invalidate one person or the other.
We asked Lauren since the start of your relationship with Stevie, you passionately kissed anyone else. You said no. Why did you say no?
Because I was telling the truth.
Tess says you lied, darling. You passed the first question. I'm just reading out what is in front of me, Lauren. That's shocked me more than anything. Jeez, since the start of your relationship with Stevie, you had sexual contact with anyone else. You said no. Lauren, you passed the sexual intercourse and you failed the other two.
The problem, of course, is that this is in fact not the case. Although there is some debate in the scientific community regarding the efficacy of polygraphs, assessments of polygraphy by scientific and government bodies generally suggest that polygraphs are inaccurate, may be defeated by countermeasures, and are an imperfect or invalid means of assessing truthfulness. Despite claims of 90% validity by polygraph advocates, the US National Research Council found no evidence of effectiveness. The American Psychological Association states that most psychologists agree that there is little evidence that polygraph tests can accurately detect lies. In 1991, 2/3 of the scientific community considered polygraphy to be pseudoscience. In 2002, a review by the National Research Council found that in populations untrained in countermeasures, specific incident polygraph tests can discriminate lying from truth at rates well above chance, though well below perfection. The review also warns against generalization from these findings to justify the use of polygraphs. Polygraph accuracy for screening purposes is almost certainly lower than what can be achieved by specific incident polygraph tests in the field, and notes that some examinees may be able to take countermeasures to produce deceptive results. In the 1998 US Supreme Court case United States vs. Sheffer, the majority stated that there is simply no consensus that polygraph evidence is reliable, and unlike other expert witnesses who testify about factual matters outside the juror's knowledge, such as the analysis of fingerprints, ballistics, or DNA found at a crime scene, a polygraph expert can supply the jury only with another opinion. The Supreme Court summarized their findings by stating that the use of polygraph was little better than could be obtained by the toss of a coin. In 2005, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal stated that polygraphy did not enjoy general acceptance from the scientific community. In 2003, the National Academy of Sciences, NAS, issued a report entitled The Polygraph and Lie Detection. The NAS found that the majority of polygraph research was unreliable, unscientific, and biased, concluding that 57 of approximately 80 research studies that the American Polygraph Association relies on to come to their conclusions were significantly flawed. These studies did show that specific incident polygraph testing in a person untrained in countermeasures could discern truth at a level greater than chance, yet short of perfection. However, due to several flaws, the levels of accuracy shown in these studies are almost certainly higher than actual polygraph accuracy of specific incident testing in the field. So what's my point here? Well, basically just that this lie detector test that forms a major part of the culture of the Jeremy Kyle Show and upends lives, this system by which Jeremy can dramatically reveal the lies of a cheating spouse or else shame someone for a lack of faith in their partner, is little more than pseudoscience based on essentially fuck all hard science, and as I just mentioned, has in the past been described as no more accurate than a coin flip. And this is the method that's going to determine a couple's or family's future. Bear in mind that these are often incredibly vulnerable people, some of whom suffer from severe mental health and or addiction issues, and then Jeremy just up and declares, based on something that's basically equivalent to a coin flip, that one half of the couple is actually a dirty cheater or a thief or whatever. One might reasonably expect a setup like this to have severe repercussions, or at the very least exacerbate some existing problems a couple of guests might be suffering with, or to be told that you're a lying cheater when you've been faithful your entire relationship. Well,
It's been a staple of daytime television for the last 14 years.
I've got Rattles. Sit down.
The Jeremy Kyle Show exposes bust-ups, breakups and occasional makeups to a live audience who clap and boo along. But now ITV has suspended filming and are under pressure to cancel it altogether after the death of a man who had recently appeared on the programme. Steve Diamond was on the show at the beginning of May. Desperate to prove to his fiancée that he hadn't been unfaithful. But the couple split up after he failed the show's famous lie detector test. A week later, he was found dead. His on-off fiancée spoke to the Sun newspaper.
I was still with him for 2 years. He was still my fiancé. I still loved him. As much as he was a pig to me, I still loved him. I want him admitted to me. And be alive and be dead.
Miss Callaghan said the show's aftercare was good, but we've spoken with someone who worked on the programme 13 years ago who paints a different picture.
They're picking on a certain level and a type of class of people to get them onto the show, to actually expose them and make it a giggle. When the guests come out, they just gun in for each other. They're kept separately, they're kept away separately, and then obviously it's the argument that comes out straight away on stage.
We also spoke with a senior researcher who'd worked on the programme more recently. He said he was surprised something like this hadn't happened sooner. He told us he'd witnessed guests being deliberately riled before they went on the programme. And of the aftercare system, he said it was to give the appearance of diligence, but in his view was merely to facilitate the programme. And of mental health issues, he said it didn't matter if they had a serious one, it wasn't always a red line, and that they would, in his view, find a way around it.
It was a hit show, but its makers today faced a grilling for their methods and their morals.
So, hello? How did you know this?
Jeremy Kyle himself had refused to take part in today's inquiry, leaving it to his colleagues to face the cameras and the MP's criticism for the now axed show. The accuracy of the lie detector test was the central issue. MPs were shown this clip of how it was used.
Why'd you fail the test then?
I haven't done anything wrong. Take some time to take it in. I haven't done anything wrong.
They then grilled the head of aftercare, Graham Stanier, about guest welfare.
That is the presenter style, and I have...
I know it's his style, and I'm aware of the style, but are you, as a professional, comfortable with what you saw?
I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible for me and my behaviour. I can't be responsible for the presenter's behaviour.
And they also queried the reliability of the lie detector results.
Have you got those figures?
I haven't got those figures.
Do you not know? Do you not know, actually?
I know that it's an 100% show, and we made it very clear to everybody, including the viewers.
This is a pretty fundamental programme. Do you not know?
I am not a lie detector expert, so what we would do is...
No, but you are responsible for this programme. You are the person who's responsible for this programme. This is a key feature in this programme. And I think if you're using that, and if you were being responsible, you would know the answer to that question.
In an incident surprising no one, a bloke who appeared on the show with his fiancée to prove his innocence after being accused of infidelity received a positive result on the lie detector test, which, as we've established, could very likely have just been a false positive, compounding his pre-existing mental health issues, leading him to take his own life and prompting an inquest that eventually led to the cancellation of the show, although Kyle himself, who declined to turn up to the inquest himself like a fucking coward, is due to return to our TVs soon, according to ITV insiders. So whilst the Jeremy Kyle show is dead and buried, we must ask, what grotesque monstrosity are they planning to replace it? And surprisingly, this wasn't even the first time this happened, although it was the first time it resulted in a successful suicide.
I'd watched it on TV, but I thought it was like more of a talk show than like more of taking the mick out of people, like vulnerable people. And obviously this man Steve, who's died as well, I feel so sorry for that family, and like, because I went through that as well, and I got to the brink of throwing myself off a train station. That's how bad it got for me, like, and that's how bad that show made me feel afterwards. And they promised me when I went there that the lie detector will either say one way, yes or no, so you'll either prove your innocence or not. And then when I went there, it obviously said I was lying, and that's what put me into a shock. And then just after that, the way I got treated through the show, before I went on there, and even after the show, was just, I don't know, I know how other people feel when they go on there. It's like a circus, really. It's not a talk show, it's not helping anyone. Like, they help the celebrities that go on there 100 times, they help them, but they don't help vulnerable people, which they should.
Depressing though it may be, however, this is far from the only negative representation of the working class on TV, and not even the only one to have literally caused a suicide. Let's talk about Love Island. Love Island is, in theory, diametrically opposed to the Jeremy Kyle show. Rather than people suffering in extreme poverty and not being able to afford cosmetic dental work, for example, which is why so many of them have bad teeth before anyone goes into the comments to bring the stereotype up, it's mostly made up of attractive people, some of whom are quite well off, but most of whom have had relatively normal jobs like air hostess, firefighter or beautician. This show is similar to other similar ones like X on the Beach, where basically the point is to portray these attractive, mostly working class and actually often extremely well educated people as vapid, uninteresting, shallow and worthless. I'm not going to talk too much about Love Island here, but the show deliberately infantilizes the contestants, turns them on one another, manipulates their emotions and pushes them to emotional breaking point for the sake of entertainment. But it's okay because they're stupid and attractive, right? Ha ha ha, what morons. I mean, it's not like these are adult humans who should be treated with respect and who may be suffering with severe mental health problems. They're attractive, they're immune to those sorts of things. It's amazing, to be honest, that they can do this whilst there have been previous contestants with master's degrees and one who is a professional scientist at the age of 23, having started her degree at 16. You can probably tell where I'm going with this. 2 Love Island contestants have committed suicide since appearing on the show, and I'll just bookend this section by quoting from an interview the mother of one of them published in a UK newspaper. Sophie Graydon's mum has hit back at an ITV boss who claimed it was strange to link the reality star's suicide to Love Island. CEO Dame Carolyn McCall said last week that the public shouldn't simplify links between Sophie and Mike Felicity's deaths and the dating show. But Deborah Graydon called Carolyn's comments principally evil and said they belittled and trivialized the death of Sophie, who hanged herself last summer aged 32. In a heart-wrenching open letter to Carolyn for the Sun, Deborah wrote, "To lose an only adored, cherished child to illness or accident is one form of loss. To lose that child to suicide is torturous. In my beautiful, darling daughter's own words, I sold my soul to ITV." She added, "As a mother yourself, I hope your hypocrisy and haughtily placed remarks sit well with your conscience." Deborah added that Sophie, who struggled with her mental health before appearing on Love Island, was desperately unhappy on the show and had made 4 separate requests to leave. She said her daughter's anxiety was at an unprecedented level by the time she left and claimed that Sophie was given a piteous 10-minute Skype chat with a counsellor after asking for help.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, babe. Thank you.
Oh, baby.
I just feel so down. I'm just struggling with everything.
It can get too much, can't it?
Well, yeah, it can, you know. I'm 30 years old. I've got my own place. I'm used to just doing my own shit when I want to do it. And yeah, all that's taken away. Completely taken away. And everything's so controlled. And I've regressed 15 years back to school. And the conversations are just like, you know, I miss intellectual conversation. I miss, like, you know, just with our friends, and it's just very sort of kind of shallow in here, and I just I don't know.
What do you want to do? What do you want to do?
I don't know, but if I carry on like if I feel like this over the next few days, like over the next couple of days, I probably will just walk.
Okay.
I came in here to potentially find someone who might be perfect, but I don't know if that guy's actually in this house.
But it's okay if you get to show what lazy scum the working class are, right? Even, perhaps especially, the ones that make your dick stand up because they're vapid and uninteresting as well. Channel 4 really does like its poverty porn and or doll shaming programming, probably reaching the most ridiculous level with Dogs on the Dole.
He likes tuna pasta, galaxies, cabbage cream eggs, pink custard. That's his favourite.
Meet the cash-strapped dog owners, caring for their canines on a budget.
They may not be able to afford to go to a vet, but they're well looked after and loved.
Dogs on the Dole, Thursday at 10 on 4.
But the originator of this trend was the now infamous Benefit Street. Now you may be asking, if you're not British, what is Benefit Street? Well, let me just show you the clip that plays at the beginning of every episode.
Unemployed, unemployed. Unemployed.
You see this street here? James Turner Street was one of the best streets.
Unemployed, unemployed.
No, one of the worst.
James Turner Street in Birmingham is not your average street. There are 99 houses, 13 nationalities, and most of the residents
Penny for the poor
are claiming benefits.
Probably 5% of people on this road that are working.
But times are getting tougher.
Housing benefit is going to get cut. What kind of nonsense is that?
They're having to learn to get by on less.
How are we supposed to live on £50 a week?
And rely on each other more.
If the council won't come and pick it up, we'll do it ourselves.
Some guy! It's mad. It's just like one great big family.
Is there any point?
Don't talk to me.
Is there any point?
Do not talk
Is there any point?
to me.
I don't think you could ever meet anything any more dysfunctional.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, send me down a couple of bob.
Over the course of a year, through good times and bad,
Move on!
life on James Turner Street
I've never lived without my kids, ever.
would be challenged like never before.
It's not all about money. You could have all the money in the world and have nothing compared to what we've got round here.
That's our road.
In general, the show, much like Jeremy Kyle, portrays those at the very bottom of our society as racist, criminal, lazy, substance-abusing scum. Benefit Street provoked controversy even before it aired, with a number of contributors claiming they were misrepresented. Featured resident Dee Roberts told the Birmingham Mail she participated because the producers told her the series would depict community spirit and neighbourliness. She added, "But this programme has nothing to do with community, which you can tell from the title. It's all about people in the street living off benefits, taking drugs and dossing around all day. It makes people out as complete scum." Dee predicted the response from many of the programme's viewers, who flooded Twitter with abusive messages and even death threats. One user wrote, "Put big gates at the ends of hashtag Benefit Street, lock them up and set the fucking lot on fire. Save us workers some money on tax, hashtag tramps." Another tweeted, "Pure scumbags, shoot a lot of them. My hard-earned tax money wasted on absolute arseholes." But others leapt to the defence of residents, criticising the show's producers instead. One person wrote, "They're calling for the people you exploited to die, Channel 4. Was it worth the ratings?" A Channel 4 spokesman called the documentary a fair reflection of the reality of life on the street where the majority of households receive benefits. Oh, and also the fact that a few of the people on the show were living in abject poverty, felt the need to bend or even break the law in order to survive or to fuel their drug and or alcohol habit, led to many class traitors to call into the police to cry about the fact that some people shoplifted or took drugs on TV, causing the police to open investigations into this people, which, I mean, what fucking bootlicking scum would do something like that? Police officers will be watching Channel 4 reality show Benefit Street to investigate crime after being inundated with messages from concerned viewers. The first episode of the show aired yesterday evening, featuring shoplifters and thieves among the residents of James Turner Street in Birmingham. It appeared to show a number of people breaking the law with benefit fraud and drug taking. Superintendent Danny Long from Birmingham Police said, "Throughout the programme and in the hours that have followed, we've been inundated with comments from members of the public, many of whom are concerned about elements of the show which showed criminal activity. We're currently assessing whether the content of the programme can assist us as part of any ongoing investigations, or indeed whether any new inquiries should be launched in light of the material that has been broadcast." Channel 4 tried to repeat this trick by picking on immigrants instead in the follow-up Immigration Street, but luckily the residents of the street they were hoping to misrepresent and demonise had seen Benefit Street, and so are more than happy to tell them to fuck off, rather directly and with physical means. You're fucking scum, and so is everyone else who doesn't work or isn't able to for whatever reason, but you know who's not? The rich, of course! They deserve to be happy because they worked harder than you. Their wealth is born out of a meritocratic system that rewards work ethic, which is why Jeff Bezos earns twice your annual salary in less than a minute. He just works millions of times harder than you, and as such, you should be forced to watch your betters enjoying their objectively better, charmed lives of property management and selling homes to one another for profit, for one to eventually deign to rent out at an extortionate rate to a pleb like you. few. These kinds of programs dominate daytime TV, and it's honestly grotesque and disgusting. A majority of millennials will never own a home. Skyrocketing house prices and stagnant wages mean that most of us can barely afford to get by, never mind save up for a deposit, and even if we could, there's a housing crisis on right now. Barely any affordable homes are being built, and the ones that already exist are usually either being rented out or sat on by baby boomers desperate to consolidate their property portfolio and only sell when house prices rise again. Likewise, council housing is at an all-time low. This is hardly a new thing. There are medical professionals in so much poverty that they're forced to rely on food banks to survive, and the average working person won't be able to own a house until or unless a family member dies and leaves them one. Look at it this way. The average wage in the UK right now is approximately £22,000 a year. The average deposit on a house for a first-time buyer is 15% of the overall price, and the average house price in the UK is just over £235,000. So that means a deposit of £35,250 or just under 1.5 years' salary. This is frankly impossible, especially for the millions of people paid significantly less than the average, especially when you consider the way things were for previous generations. I've brought this up before, but my grandmother worked part-time as a receptionist for the local newspaper, and my grandfather was a delivery guy, and they managed to buy a house, raise 5 kids, and buy a new car every few years, as a relatively young couple. Likewise, on the other side, my granddad was a carpenter and my grandma didn't work, and they were able to buy a house relatively easily, again, as a young couple. My parents and all my aunts and uncles were able to buy houses without much hassle in their 20s and 30s. I, on the other hand, in all likelihood will not own a house until I'm at least middle-aged, and that's only because I'll probably inherit one. Previous generations were able to buy homes on their own steam. We have to wait for family members to die before we have even the slightest chance of being able to buy one. There are hundreds of thousands of homeless people in the UK. The death toll is rising every day, and almost every working class person in this country is only 1 or 2 patches of bad luck from being or becoming homeless. So, let's remind you of how the rich and powerful don't have to worry about that because they're better than you. There are tons of these shows, and it's honestly upsetting how hostile they appear to be. Hey, look at the life you could have had if capitalism hadn't been so hard on you. It's a horrific message to share, but here we are. Listen, peasant, I know you're poor, desperate, barely scraping enough money to get by, forced to rely on food banks, and your rent is astronomically high, but you have to keep paying it because if you don't, you'll be living on the streets, so you pay your landlord every last penny you own rather than buying enough food to last a month. It sucks. Well, how about to distract yourself from that, you watch a bunch of rich people with extra house-buying money just lying around, bid on and buy homes you can only dream of. The premise of this show is basically rich people buy homes, renovate them, and rather than do anything to benefit society or those in need, sell them on for profit or occasionally rent them out instead. You know, that thing that only rich people can do. In order to make the massive profits they end up raking in, you have to first have enough money to buy a house in the first place, and also have the money to renovate it, all the time while presumably having a secondary income and or do this on such a regular basis that this is your income, and also have a pre-existing home in which to live. And this is mostly played on TV screens to people so desperate, so destitute, that they can barely afford to keep paying rent on the home they currently live in. This shit is what I was talking about when I said that capitalism incentivizes work, but for the wrong reasons, and in many ways that benefit only the rich. These people could be using their resources and utilizing their efforts to renovate derelict buildings, turning them into adequate homes for people who need them, or even building new homes, but they don't because there's no money in providing homes for the homeless, but there's plenty of it in buying one of the very few fixer-upper homes that could otherwise serve as a refuge for the desperate, and paying a team of construction workers to instead make it suitable for purchase by one of the very few young people actually able to buy a home, or alternatively, another hawkish property-buying capitalist, and raising the surrounding house prices by a significant enough margin to discourage any first-time buyers or working-class people being able to buy property in the area for the foreseeable future.
At £66,000, 67, 68.
Unfortunately, we didn't catch the bidding for this lot, but it eventually sold for £256,000. The successful bidders were Paul, seen here on the right, and his brother Jeff. They're both recently retired and decided the time was right to get into property. Martel met them back at the house to find out their plans.
Congratulations on your purchase. I love it.
There's plenty to love about it.
So this is a project together?
A joint project, yes it is.
Yes it is, yeah. It's the first joint project we've done. I've done a few self-builds over the last 20, 30 years and decided when I took retirement to venture into renovation.
And what's your game normally?
Well, I used to be a finance director and I took very early retirement last year.
Really early retirement?
Very early.
Very early.
Older than he looks.
Oh, you're older than you look. Well, you look like it's very early retirement. And what do you do?
I was a production manager in a local bakery for 37 years, and I took early retirement earlier last year.
Yeah.
But I do some part-time work in a local golf course at the moment.
Are you a wee bit like you're the kind of guys who need to be doing something?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Definitely, yes.
So why this house? What's the plan for you? Is this purely an investment to sell on?
Yeah, that is the main plan. It's to renovate it and then look to sell it on and perhaps do another one after then if this one's successful.
How fucking relatable. This is probably the worst one of these in my opinion. Essentially it's just old British people either retiring to or else opening a business in Europe, exploiting the local housing market to buy homes at insultingly low prices in countries the culture of which they don't respect, and generally just treating a foreign culture as the backdrop to their weird colonial fantasy.
Today I'm house hunting in the rural region of Abruzzo in Italy. Its rolling hills, olive groves and vineyards make it the perfect location to find the quintessential Italian country property. I'm Jasmine Harmon, and over the last decade I've helped hundreds of people find their dream homes. We've spent this summer travelling around Europe searching for gorgeous houses at great prices in popular summer sun destinations. We've found that the property market is changing fast. As Spain, Italy and France recover, things are hotting up. And for the first time in many years, some agents think this could be the start of a new house price boom. Are they right? Stick with us and decide for yourself. To get the lowdown on property in the region, I'm meeting estate agent Cristina Di Benigno. What's happening with property right now?
In the last 5 years, the market have been dropping. The prices are lower, about 30–35% since 2010.
Wow.
Yeah.
So does that mean there are bargains to be found here?
Yes, the bargains are in the countryside where many owners want to get rid of old properties, and there are many properties available.
Really?
Yes.
So there's a lot of stock on the market. Does that mean people can negotiate on the asking price?
Yes,
right.
Because many people need to sell.
Considering that these are mostly older people, and especially considering that they say shit like this.
Before showing Ali and Steve my fifth and final property, I want to find out more about life in Abruzzo from Stephen and Jackie Rood, who moved over here 2 years ago. What was it that attracted you to this area?
One of the things that's really nice about living here is they're so involved in tradition. You know, any excuse for fireworks, any excuse.
Fun and family.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do like is they do have a tremendous respect for the family.
What would you say are the main differences between life here and life back in the UK?
We like to buy locally. You know, we have a great butcher in town. We have the little trucks that come around different days of the week. So we have the vegetable men who come on different days. We have the fish man. And then there's a young guy who comes around with a refrigerated truck that has cheese and salami. You know, it's quite the Wednesday morning gathering at the end of the street here where everybody's, you know, picking their veggies.
It's rather infuriating to watch because these are basically just rich old people who want to fuck up the housing market of another country, and let's be honest here, definitely voted for Brexit in order to, as I said, live out a fantasy of retiring to an Italian village. Anyway, this one is mostly just a dig at older people watching. Hey, if you hadn't fucked up your retirement, you wouldn't have to stay in the UK. You could retire to the south of France and live out the rest of your life in luxury. Too bad you were too lazy. It's astonishing because these are the same people who never stop going on about how immigrants to the UK don't respect British culture, don't assimilate, are an economic drain on the country, and can fuck up the housing market by claiming housing benefits, but much like Britain First, don't seem to give much of a shit about the Russian billionaires buying up property in London, which already has limited housing, only to leave them empty a majority of the time. This goes unacknowledged because these are rich immigrants. They're okay. It's just the poor ones we don't like and spend hours of our time demonizing on the internet. This is just an exaggerated version of Escape to the Country, which has a similar concept, but rather than playing on people's fantasies of moving to the Mediterranean or a remote Italian mountain village, instead focuses on the fantasy of moving out to the countryside in the UK.
Well, Sarah and James, I have to say, welcome to the East Midlands.
Thank you.
And why is the time right for you both to make this, well, very important move?
We're looking for a little bit more space. We'd like to start a family soon. We'd also like to get a dog, if that's possible. And I think that our London flat would be a bit of a squeeze.
So what are you both looking for then with this new property that you're after?
3 bedrooms minimum, 4 if possible, a big kitchen, possibly with a sort of family dining area.
A little workspace for me if possible. I'm going to be working at home a little bit, so either an office area or perhaps if there's a 4th bedroom that I can convert into an office area. And then a big garden if possible.
And what about the architectural style of this perfect property?
Well, we both definitely agree that a period property or an older property is what we're after, but with modern features inside that's maybe been renovated, because I don't think we'd be able to do too much work.
Sarah, you're going to be still commuting into London?
I'm going to be commuting into London, so we'd like to be near enough a train station that comes into the area of London that I work in, but at the same time, a good position for James.
Yes, I'm looking to move up here job-wise as well,
Right.
so yeah, double move for me.
And you're renting at the moment, so I take it that you can move pretty quickly if we find you that perfect property.
That's right, yeah, no chain.
Hope so.
And then let's remind ourselves then of your budget for this area in the East Midlands.
Sure, we're looking at a maximum of 400,000.
Well, let's hope we can achieve that for you over the next few days. We've got 3 wonderful properties lined up to show you, so should we get started?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
A concept that for most people is unrealistic and unattainable, partially because the cost of living in more remote locations is much higher, specifically because it's mostly rich people who live there, is self-perpetuating, but also because most jobs and also most job centres are in cities, so it would be unrealistic for a working or even unemployed person to get by that far out of a major town or city. Remember when I had a proper rant about that one video that millionaire YouTuber Ali A made, where he basically shows off his mansion and makes it clear just how much richer than you he is and how infuriatingly smug he was, but also how depressing it was that millions of people watched that video anyway? Well, this is basically just that, except rather than being 18 minutes long, it's an hour, and there's a new one posted every single day, and usually you can catch repeats on weekends as well.
Fuck the poor. What is all this hoo-ha for?
This has not been an in-depth review or analysis of the way our media indoctrinates us, teaches us our society's norms and morals, regardless of how fucked up they are, and drills into us that capitalism is good, the poor are just lazy, and that those in need don't deserve our help. But it has been a dissection of a very specific part of it. The disabled, elderly, and unemployed deserve better. They don't choose to live in abject poverty, and in fact many of them have chosen suicide rather than continue to live under the brutal conditions the Conservative government, capitalism, and austerity have forced upon them. It may seem like an exaggeration, but when you're at the lowest point a person can reach, struggling to survive and eking out a pitiful existence, it's an act of class warfare to actively be shown media that demonizes you and people like you, compares you to people like this.
Oi, prostitute, go back to the street corner.
Go back to the street corner! Everyone! You're the one being chatting up every member of staff in this place! Oh,
Remember, I'm single. I do it for free.
Mocks and bullies people, possibly suffering from the same issues you might be, for example alcoholism, deep-rooted mental health issues, or an abusive relationship, accuses you of being vapid, unintelligent, and uninteresting if you're working class, and also passing an arbitrary level of attractiveness, and then once it's thoroughly broken you down, sees fit to show the lives of the rich and powerful as an aspirational exercise, and portrays them as generally reasonable, kind, fun, relatable people to be, and to be around, in stark contrast to the working class representation often showcased on daytime TV.
Welcome to the show. Now, investing in property can be a rewarding venture.
Yes, reducing the risk by doing your research is vital. Be a Gold Star student and SWAT up before you get involved in any projects.
Absolutely, and once you are in the know, you can head down to your local property auction to see just what's on offer.
Is it water with the sheep in the box?
Hello everyone. I actually wasn't intending on making this video for quite a while, but then I was exposed to 10 minutes worth of Hums Under the Hammer whilst in a hospital waiting room, so I felt compelled to make this. Anyway, you probably know why we're here, but if not, the people whose names are currently on screen now, all the people who give me money on Patreon each month, to whom I want to extend my eternal thanks, especially now that I'm out of work. That money is essential to me, basically, to get food. But I especially want to thank the following people: Emily, formerly known as Corvus. Next we have Ryan, Brian, Stacey Solano, Susie M, Thomas McCallum, and Tom Newport. And if you want to join these people and have your name lovingly rendered on screen in front of this montage of sheep herding, you can head over to my Patreon. There should be a link somewhere on screen at the moment. Likewise, if you want me to read out some kind of weird meme username, feel free to donate more than $5, and that's what I'll do. Until next time, I should have thought of some kind of joke or catchphrase. Anyway, goodbye!
from the one person she knows about. Have you had sexual contact with anybody else? That's everything from a kiss to intercourse. Sexual contact, sexual contact. Sexual contact, sexual contact. He said no. This test says he lied. She deserves better, and he deserves nothing.